So, Dukey Buddy shows up in, Dukey Buddy shows up at the beginning, obviously, right? Then we see him in the third scene where he's changing, right? Then we see him again in this, see, he just kind of comes back periodically. Just kind of make sure you're paying attention to him. And we were talking last time about how interesting it was, the Isabella Angelo scene in the second act, where the event sort of happens. They meet, Angelo gets the hots for her, he makes the proposition, right? And then we're left with, what is she going to do? There it was. They meet, proposition, what is she going to do? Right? And how it's done in two scenes, where it doesn't necessarily have an indication that time passes, but what's kind of great about breaking it up for time passes, it builds suspense about what is she going to decide to do, right? And guess who's in the middle of that? Dukey, right? Isabella Angelo here, Isabella Angelo here, who creates this thing. Remember we talked last week also about she gets all the lines in this one, Angelo gets all the lines in that one, right? Decision's already been made. She's got nothing to say about this. It's going to happen. And she also knows that even if she does this, he's not going to be true to his, we all know he's not going to be true to his word, do we not? Mm-hmm. Right? This is the sort of...
Clarence Thomas.
What's that?
Clarence Thomas.
Right, because he's in charge. He's in charge. He can do whatever he wants. Nothing's going to happen to him, as far as we can tell. Ha ha. Right? Right? So, we've got, I think Angelo has to be brown, I've decided. Angelo, and now we've got Angelo, right? And where else does he show up? No, not yet. A little bit of, and he doesn't then show up again until the end of the play. Right? Now that's sort of interesting. Now, theoretically, he's here, but it's off stage. Right?
Busy.
The bed trick. He's off stage. Right? So we hear about him, right? But we don't see him. That's sort of interesting. You're like, really, Angelo? The guy who, remember we talked last week, he's the guy that becomes the center of the play in a way? That sort of like creepy hero that we don't really like? You know, the Shakespeare said, oh, I'm going to put the creepy hero in the center of the play and see what happens. Well, here he is. And I think we can't handle too much of the creepy hero, so we've got to get back to Lucio, someone really fun, right? Pompey is my favorite character. Right? So it's just sort of interesting to sort of put in these kinds of frames. Now, what are we going to do for Isabella? She's got to be pink. Pink? Do we have pink? I think we have pink. So where does she show up? She shows up in the fourth scene. Yes? Yes. Oh, it's kind of a wimpy color for her. That's not going to really cut it, is it? She's here. She's here. And it's just sort of, and I like to do it in color so you can kind of get a sense for like, and then here's the big Dukey Isabella scene. We'll put Dukey in there in a second. Right? And talk about how we're going to do that. Right? Fourth grade. She's here. Part of the big plot, you know, Duke's coming, Duke's coming, Duke's coming, Duke's coming, remember the Duke is coming. And then, you know, she's obviously in here too, right? So it's just sort of interesting to sort of chart her. Kind of easy to do when you do it sort of in color, right? Dukey is here. And you just begin to see how he is really completely manipulating, or thinks he's manipulating, right? Or is a part of the structure of this play. Interesting, huh? It just kind of pops out when you sort of do it. Everybody just gets their own kind of color stuff. Who else have we got? Claudio. Lucio and Claudio. So I don't know about Claudio. So somebody's gonna have to look real quick to see where he is. But I do know about Lucio. Because he, of course, has really interesting sort of things that happen to him, right? Lucio, and with that act, Leslie, and obviously he's the guy at the end, too, right? He sort of pops up periodically. Claudio must be here. Yes, right? Claudio. Yeah. He's gotta be in here somewhere. 3-2-ish.
Yeah.
Right there. What's that? Yeah, she goes to see him. Right. Claudia coming out way at the end, right? So it's just interesting to sort of look at it in terms of like.
3-1.
He's 3-1.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
His big C.
Yeah, his big C's here, right? Yeah. Whoops, that's Lucio. Audio, baby. Right? So it's just, and then sort of, anywhere else? Is he just like 3 times? Do you think he just comes 3 times?
That sounds right.
That's
The end.
True, you only
And
goes,
at the end.
yeah, right at the end, right? Oh, how interesting that is, right?
already put in the
Yeah, you put in 4-2, right?
Right.
4-2? Yeah. Crap.
That's
my whole chart, damn it. It's not me, it's Shakespeare. Yeah, but, oh, that's kind of interesting. I mean, he's
Yeah, but twice in 2.
Right? It's just sort of interesting where he
In
becomes
two
an anchor then,
sides,
doesn't
yeah.
he? It looks like he structurally is an anchor of sorts. Right? It's interesting to sort of think about him, like what happens to him and how that chart and what his change is. How is he here? How is he here? How is he here? How is he here? How are people acting on him? What's coming to him? What's coming away from him? Just interesting to think about it. Puts him in a different kind of light than sort of, it's like, oh, poor Claudio, All the Claudios and all the plays don't do so good. But, that he's got a different function, right? That there's something else to carry in terms of telling the story, which I think is kind of interesting. So this is kind of like the kind of junk I do. I just sort of look at it. I mean, it's middle-sized play, like 3,000 lines. It's right kind of in the smack dab middle. It's 23%. Prose or 25% prose, something like that, 75%. I mean, and again, that's an interesting statistic, but when people speak, right, in using that language is more important than sort of like the statistics of it, 7% of it's rhyme. So I'll look at that kind of stuff, and then also I just kind of like start charting. The next thing to do would be chart words. Like, where are they? Where does seeming show up? Where does authority show up? Where does justice show up? I mean, obviously, Isabella's got her big moment at the end, where we say it 3 times, right? And where are the other 3 times in that sort of milepost kind of way? So then sometimes words, again, the poet, think of the poet who's putting the word in a particular place in a line, right? Just think of it typographically a bit. And then we've got this beautiful structural convention of iambic pentameter that he's also working within. But he's putting words in particular place to be heard, that there is something around it to set it up to be heard and things away from it so that it lingers. And the repetition with different voices hits at you in your body in different spots, just by the different sounds from different actors speaking the words, right? So that you can kind of follow that as sort of like the Mitch Miller ball, of sort of following along the lyrics thing. You just sort of follow the word. You could tell the whole story by just those moments of authority, 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 authority. That it becomes a motif that then will be drummed into you emotionally just by sound.